Tell me a bit about the painting, because at one point, I can't remember if this is a quotation from him or from you, but he's described as a lucky jack of all trades. And I wondered to what extent his talents as a painter and as a writer have perhaps made it less easy for people to know exactly where, how to take him and what he is or what his place is in contemporary culture.
I think that the fact that he does so many things is what makes him unusual and fascinating, and also hard to place, and that's made his life more difficult because people can't easily put him in a box, and that's difficult for publishing because they have to deal with him doing his artwork, and they're not used to it. It's difficult for those digesting his art because it's so full of words, and it's difficult for those in poetry and plays and polemics and everything because he has been involved in all of these things, and no matter how much you press him, he won't admit to being more one than the other because he isn't. And that makes the whole story far more complicated, and I think it's definitely made it more difficult for him to be accepted. Yet I think certain things are just taking a little while longer. For example, you mentioned the painting there. In the last 12 months, the main change that's happened with Alasdair since I finished the book is that he now has an international art agent who is finally making him money from his paintings, and he's 73. It's just taken a while. But then it took a while with the writing as well. He was in his 50s by the time his first book came out, and it had taken him 30 years. So maybe that's just part of the pattern of long gestation periods. And I think the best of his work will survive, and people will always be confused by him and gone, yes, well, what is he really? But then that's a question that there's no point asking, I don't think. William Blake was both. He was both artist and poet, and so is Alasdair.
Let me ask you finally, presumably one of the outcomes you hope the book will have is that people go back and read the work or discover the work for the first time. And I wondered what you would say to somebody who has never dipped a toe into the water, where best to start with Alasdair Gray's writing.
The one that I always recommend to people who have no context for Alasdair or don't know his work at all is Poor Things, because I think that's the most fun. I think it has all of the elements of the flavour of Glasgow that's always so important in Alasdair's work, but it doesn't keep readers away. It invites people in, and also because it has elements of Gothic and pastiche and trying so many different flavours at the same time. I think that's the most easy to get at, but not it's not shallow in any way. It's a deeply satisfying, rich book, and much of Alasdair's best work has come as a surprise to him. And Poor Things came out of nowhere. He was writing a short story book he wasn't really interested in at the time, and as he said, it swole up enormous without his permission, which is always a great sign. It meant that he was just doing it for fun, and you can see the fun on the page, and that's the one I always recommend for starters.
And is Lanark the one that in decades to come will be on lists of great Scottish books, do you think?
I think the momentum is behind Lanark in a way that the others would find hard to catch up with. But again, I find this stuff interesting. The reception to 1982 Janine has definitely changed in recent years since it was republished as a Canongate classic about 5 years ago. The attitude to it was very negative at the beginning, but I think it's, in many ways, it's his strongest, most powerful work. It's most difficult in a way as well, but I hope that that's the one that is remembered. I think Poor Things, because it was the most popular, also has a chance. But even very great writers struggle to be remembered for more than one book. And if it's Lanark, then that's okay, because that's the book that he always wanted to write before he died, and it took him most of his life to write it. And once he'd finished it, he didn't quite know what to do, because he felt he'd achieved what he wanted to. So perhaps that is right, that it will be Lanark.